Today is August 4th, 2023. We are interviewing Ruth Gallagher. My name is Esther Finder. Ms. Gallagher is in Scarborough, Maine. I am in Henderson, Nevada, in the United States, and the language will be English. Thank you for speaking with us today. What is your name, and can you please spell it?
Ruth Gallagher. My last name is spelled Gallagher.
What was your name at birth?
Ruth Lowenstein. Lowenstein.
Where were you born?
In Berlin, Germany.
When?
1924. Or August 19.
How old are you today?
98.
What can you tell us about Berlin of your childhood?
Would you mind repeating that question?
What can you tell us about what Berlin was like in your childhood?
Well, my father was head of the health department in Berlin, and we had a nice big house on a place called Wannsee, Wansee, which is right near Berlin. And I had a twin brother. I was 10 months younger than he, and he didn't forget it. And we had a pretty normal childhood. We mostly played with each other. Even at a young age, we were very close. And we lived a nice life. We had a nanny, and we had a big black German shepherd, which was very important because he guarded us. And we lived there until my father was told he could no longer have that house or work as a director of public health because of his Jewish background.
Can you tell us what was your father's name?
George Lowenstein.
And what was your mother's name?
Johanna. Well, her married name was Lowenstein, but before that, it was Sabbath, Sabath.
What work did your mother do?
My mother basically helped my father. He was, she just dealt with all his business and helped him in that way, as far as I know. I was a little kid.
What do you know about relationships between the Jews and non-Jews in Berlin when you were little, when you were a young child, before Hitler came to power?
Well, my parents moved to Berlin to an apartment above a bar. And he practiced general medicine. While he made the change, my brother and I were moved to my grandparents who lived in Czechoslovakia. We stayed there for a couple of years while they moved, and got adjusted to their new life. After we came back, I don't know that we, being little kids, that we didn't know the word Nazi, and our father explained to us that it was a different regime and that Hitler had taken away the Kaiser's rule. And the Kaiser didn't really exist anymore. And Hitler was going to be in power. The way it affected us is my father got a piece of land so my brother and I could play in grass. And one of the days we walked there. A streetcar was pushed over by the Nazis, and people were killed. And I don't know how old I was, 5, 6, but my hair turned white thereafter, bit by bit. That was too horrible for a little kid to see. So we went home after that. And I'm sure that my mother tried very hard to console us, or at least me. My brother was more silent, and he didn't say so much, except he was always close, so that if I felt bad about something, I could go to him, because we saw so little of our parents. It made my brother and me closer. The next thing I remember is Kristallnacht, when we were all told in the middle of the night to go downstairs on the street. And the Nazis, of course, could care less whether it was hot or cold. It was cool. And we watched them break any glass they could find. Possessions, windows, anything that was glass was destroyed. And when they were done with that, there was around the apartment and a little bit further in the street, buildings. And then they started abusing people. My father was abused. My mother was, they just grabbed her a little bit, but they didn't really abuse her. But he was abused. He was beaten. He had to drink his own urine. He was in pretty bad shape after they were done. But there were many people put on a truck, and God knows at that time where they were taken. And that was a pretty bad memory. And it was extremely upsetting, and I couldn't understand it. I think my brother had better understanding than I, but I couldn't understand why such a thing would happen. Why they hauled us out of bed? For what? And then, this may have happened before, the Reichstag building burned. That was shortly after Hitler came. And after that, he was definitely in power. And my father woke us up to see the burning building from our apartment. He said, now things will really change. Because being a little kid and not as aware as my brother, it was curious. Why? Why would anybody burn a nice building? And after that, whenever we were in the street or there was marching, everybody had to stand and raise their arm like that, Heil Hitler, and stand that way until whoever marched was, and just waited with their arm raised. And after a while your arm hurts. And you wonder, why am I doing this? And it was frightening. And we did this often. And then, I don't know where we heard it, but they said that if your parents do something to you, you have to report it, like if they punish you for something. And of course, those days, a mother or father could slap their kids. And if they do, the Nazis would come and take them away, take the parents away. My parents didn't believe in corporal punishment. The punishment, certainly I received, and I received many because I was dyslexic and couldn't read by the time I was supposed to, 6, 7. And I was told stupid, and so first of all, nobody paid much attention to somebody who's a little bit stupid. And anyway, my brother had a bad heart. Nobody knew it then. And both of us, once we went to school, and we were in, my brother helped me to read, but he read to me because I couldn't read. And anyway, we were often chased towards our apartment. For my brother, it was bad because he turned blue. I was stopped a few times. I must have been 11 by that time. And the Hitler youth men got a hold of me. They were boys, teenagers, got me in the basement and raped me several times. I really didn't know what that was about, but I knew that it certainly was not only unpleasant, but terrible, just terrible. One boy after another to rape you. It's something you don't forget. That summer, my father was part of the United Nations. He met a lady, and she took on my brother and said, I want him to come to England and go to school. Because in Germany, my brother was a very bright young man, and he always got all A's. They gave him all D's because of his Jewish background. And we all wore a yellow star to make sure everybody knew we were Jews. And because I failed in school anyway, so it didn't make any difference to me, except at the end, we had to learn several languages. French, which we spoke at home anyway, was German. And Latin I liked because I liked the sound. But English. And this particular teacher wanted each one to pronounce the English words the way he pronounced them. And I could repeat, but obviously I didn't repeat them correctly because he took a ruler and hit me over the knuckles. From then on, I didn't learn any English anyway because being hurt wasn't my thing. When we were 12, my brother came home. He told my parents that he did not want to stay in Germany because he couldn't learn, and anyway, he wouldn't learn. And however, he told the lady who had him, who looked after him, that he couldn't go anywhere. He had to have me go with him. So he went to the German consulate and just stayed there a couple of nights. He was a skinny little kid. And after a while, they got sick of this kid sitting outside, even at night. And finally, they let him in, and they gave him a visa for me, too. And the lady had written a letter saying she would look after me as well. My father...
Can you please clarify, where was your brother when he was trying to get you out?
I'm sorry, I didn't get you.
Where was your brother when he was trying to get you a visa?
At the consulate.
In what city?
Berlin. This was all Berlin.
Okay.
Anyway, in the meantime, my father had applied for a number to leave Germany. And he was just waiting. In the meantime, my brother and I, my parents put us on a train to England. And saying goodbye to our mother was really difficult. We had a suitcase, and it was painful. And it was wonderful I had my brother. So we left for England.
Can I ask you a couple of questions before you move on to England? You talked about Kristallnacht a few moments ago.
About what?
Kristallnacht. You mentioned Kristallnacht, and your father was abused. Was your father arrested?
No, he was never arrested because he was treated Goebbels. And Goebbels said that Germany didn't make decent doctors because they were trained for a year. And I could never understand how you can train a doctor to be a doctor in a year, but anyway, Goebbels told him to get out. And they hid for a year. There were people who took my parents in and looked after them. And they packed up our stuff and were assured that they had some pretty nice stuff, that they would get their stuff back after the war. In the meantime, the Germans took over Czechoslovakia and then Sudetenland and so on and so on. But my brother and I had left. But it was dangerous for people to hide anyone. If they were caught, they were put into a concentration camp.
I have a few more questions about your time in Berlin. I want to go back a little bit, and I apologize. For a few minutes I lost the audio and I could not hear you. So if you already said this, I'm sorry. But what religious traditions did you grow up with?
Oh, my parents were never Jewish believers. First, they always believed in nature. But then they found Quakerism, and they became Quakers. It was like now, you really had to think and believe. And they taught us very carefully about people, that one must always be kind to people and respect people. And I know we had a maid who was supposed to cook and clean for us, for my parents and us, and she would report everything to the Nazis. So if my parents wanted to speak to us about anything, we would get in the car and drive someplace and get out and speak to, or my parents would speak to us then, because we didn't want everything repeated. That was nobody's business but our family business. During that time, sometimes, my mother had a big family in Czechoslovakia. I loved them. They were nice people, good people, helped people. The Nazis came and took the whole family, and they went to a concentration camp and were destroyed. And my parents, my father's brothers, I don't know what happened. I think he had 3 brothers, and I think they were all destroyed with a concentration camp. My mother's eldest sister was put in a concentration camp. She and her husband were working in the kitchen. I don't know if it was Dachau or which concentration camp, but by stealing food, they survived. They stole food very carefully. They survived, and after the war lived in Leipzig. They were artists. But anyway, when I hear people talk about their families now, I think, isn't it wonderful they have families? And the families were normal.
Were you in Berlin in 1936 during the Olympics?
Yes.
What do you remember about that?
Not much, except I saw the first time a black man. And I thought, what makes him different? Nothing. He's a different color. That was the end of it. Of course, sports for my father didn't do any sports. My mother didn't. And the sports we had in school, I did for my brother. I used to put on his clothes and do his sports because he just couldn't physically. And I couldn't read. I thought it was a pretty good exchange.
Before we move on to England, I have a few more questions. What were you told to expect in England? Did you get any guidance on what you should do, how you should behave, anything like that?
In England?
When you were leaving to go to England, did
My
anybody
parents
give you advice?
My parents did not instruct us. There wasn't enough time.
What were you able to take with you when you left?
Clothes.
And who went with you? Just you and your brother?
Just my brother and I.
What was that trip like, leaving Germany?
Oh, I didn't care about leaving Germany. We both knew there was no hope for us at all.
Did you have expectations of England?
No.
What were your first impressions?
I think confusion more than anything. And I didn't understand the language.
When did you arrive in England?
Oh my God. It must have been September. It was right after our 14th birthday, so it must have been September.
What year? What year?
19, I think it was must have been 1939.
What were some of the challenges that you had when you came to England? What adjustments were difficult?
Well, this very nice lady who took us on had found a family in Derbyshire for me. And I went there and they were just so nice to me. Now, since I didn't know English, if you pointed out a table, it would say table, and I would repeat it and then remember it. That's how I learned English. My brother went to a school in the hills, and they quickly found out that he couldn't run up and down hills. And after 6 weeks, I knew enough English, so she arranged for me, to go to Kingsmore School, which was in northern England. And after a while, my brother also came to that school. It was a small manor house. It was a big manor house, but wasn't very much like a school, but we learned. And at first I had to live in a stable, which was clean and very warm because of the straw. Straw is warm. And of course they provided cleanliness and all that stuff. And there were a couple of teachers from New Zealand who taught me to read. They had a lot of patience. They quickly found out what my trouble was. I couldn't. I saw the letters upside down around, but not the way they were. And they worked with me to turn my brain around so I could see that a B is a B and a P is a P, and so on. And of course, once I learned to read, I was so happy because I could pick up books and read. And I spent a lot of time reading to try and catch up. My brother, they wanted to, when we left, they wanted to keep my brother and send him to Oxford, but my father wouldn't allow for us to be separated. In the long run, I sure was glad.
While you were in England, what did you know about events in Germany, in Europe, and how the Jews were being treated?
They were bombing. They're bombing a lot in London, of course, and destroyed, and we knew that. And we knew about the suffering that the people had with the bombing and destroying their homes, destroying families. We, on the other hand, had a bridge near the school, and not so many people, and we all went under that bridge for safety. And when the bombing was over, we went back. The school was never bombed. And food was hard. They went hunting there were hills, not mountains, and I think we must have gotten all the rabbits. I don't think I could eat another rabbit. And it was made in many ways. And they treated us very well. I mean, I think when you come from something like that, you're a little crazy. And life leaves you, so you're different, no matter what you believe. But you're different. And I know I used to try and find bushes to try and hide in. I don't know what I hid from, but I hid. And I think some of that craziness I had here in America too. Even now, there are things where I feel very unsafe. And it's crazy, I know it's not so. In my head I know one thing, but in my heart I know different. Only I don't know. It's just there. And there's leftovers that you can't help anybody. I know my brother had some too.
When you look back on your early years in Germany, in England, what other memories come to mind?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand you.
When you look back to your early years in Germany and in England, what other things come to mind? I'm asking because of what you just said, that you have one sensation from, intellectually and one emotionally. So I wanted you to think now, while you're still in that mood here, what else do you remember from your early years?
I remember from my early years, well, I was always my brother. And it was quite nice, very normal to our American life. I was a kid. Parents took us for a walk. Sometimes they took us to a museum. I remember kindness. Of course, I remember some of my family, and I loved them. And England, I think if I didn't have the Quaker religion, it would have been harder. Because you meditate. Even as a kid, you meditate. Maybe you don't meditate right, if there's a right or wrong. But somehow you work it out so you can live. And I've always liked people.
How long were you in England?
Well, at that time it was 2 years. And then my husband was in the Air Force, and we went back and we were there for 3 years.
I think you just ran ahead of me. During the war years, how long were you in England?
2 years.
And what do you know about where your parents were and what their experience was?
My parents didn't come for, was a little bit over a year, and the Quakers arranged for them to have a apartment. Had almost no furniture in, except a bed, table, and a couple of chairs. It did have a kitchen, and they provided them with food, and I know my father went to learn about Southern medicine. I mean, real Southern. And he was happy that he could go to school and learn some more. My brother and I saw them, I think, once during that time, just for a very short visit, because they were in London, we were in Northern England. And all of us did go by ship from England to America. That trip was sort of a lengthy, I think it took us 10 days because there were U-boats. And you never knew where they were. You hoped to God you missed them. So we got here
When did you leave England?
Oh, God. Must have been 41. Something like that. I'm sorry, I'm still terrible on numbers.
You were in England at the beginning of World War II when Germany invaded Poland. You were in England then?
Yeah, I think before Poland. It was Czechoslovakia that took. Czechoslovakia and then Ukraine.
What do you remember hearing about the invasion of Poland?
Not too much. But my grandfather had a factory or warehouse in someplace in Poland, not too far from Germany. I don't know where. And of course the Nazis got rid of him and took away the whatever it was. And he came to live with my parents. Well, I was a kid.
Did you have any idea at that time how Jews were being treated by the Nazis?
No, except I always worried that my parents would go to a concentration camp. I wasn't worried about myself. I was more worried about them and my brother. And of course, in Germany as a kid in school, one day a friend would be there and the next day they were gone. Nobody knew where they went. And that was very upsetting. I just couldn't understand where they went or why they never could come back. When I hear people talk about their longtime friends from grade school and how they get together and have a good time, I'm always a little jealous because all my friends just went, one at a time.
When you came to the United States, where did you land? Where did you settle?
Oh, I had, I don't know what relationship she was, but we stayed with her in the Bronx, in New York, for a week. My father had a job as a doctor in Mississippi, but they could have cared less whether there was an MD or not. He decided that if he was going to live in the United States, he better be an MD. So he went for 1 year internship in a Catholic hospital in Chicago, and my mother worked in a bakery. My brother and I, the Quakers arranged for a camp where other people were same position as we. Not everybody, but a lot of kids were there, and we had a summer supposed to be to acclimate us to America. However, it became evident very quickly that nobody wanted to hear our story or about the war, or about anything, so we shut up real quick. And it was a time before America got into the war. But I always thought Roosevelt was smashing.
I'm sorry, you thought he was what?
Smashing. A wonderful leader.
Can you elaborate on what you said a moment ago? Nobody wanted to hear. Give me an example of what you mean by that, please.
Oh, if I wanted to talk about life in Germany or anything that happened to us, didn't want to hear about it. And it's understandable because nobody wanted a second war.
You had mentioned your father was a practicing physician in Mississippi.
No. He went to Mississippi, found out they could have cared less whether or not he was a doctor or not, as long as he had been a doctor. But he didn't have the degree here. He had it in Germany, but not here.
So where did your family finally settle?
My parents lived in Chicago. My brother, after we went to a Quaker school in Ohio, my brother and I, and after a year, he got a scholarship in Wisconsin. Then he just got scholarships to become a doctor. He was a doctor by the time he was 21, 22. But in those days, instead of 4 years for his bachelor's, he did it in 3. And medical school, I think he had the whole 4 years. And I stayed 2 years in the Quaker school because my English was still not good enough. Then by that time, when I graduated, I was 18 and or close to it. I had no idea what I wanted. And I went back to my parents, who had a very small apartment, and my father said, "You're too stupid to be anything but a bedpan carrier." So I got a scholarship in New Orleans to start nursing. However, I have a real thing about discrimination, and I couldn't understand why we were so discriminating to the black people. And eventually it got me in trouble and they got rid of me. Also had appendicitis. So they said, "You'll never be a nurse. You don't have the dexterity." Well, I agreed, don't have too much dexterity. But my father arranged that I would finish my 3-year training in Chicago. And then I decided I got to know America, so I hopped myself on a bus, and just whenever I ran out of money, I worked as a nurse till I had enough money for the next bus fare, and I made the country. And then when I came back, I thought, I still don't know what I want to do. I mean, I know I don't want to be working inside a hospital. So eventually, I went to a nurse's place where you sort of can go over what you want to do. She named it all. I didn't want any of it, except the last one she named was public health. So I said, okay, but you have to have a degree. So I started school. And, God, what was the school? It was a university. And I worked in the slums of Chicago, and I loved it. But I didn't get a degree because my parents finally decided to retire, and my father got a job here in Maine at Great Chesapeake Island as a physician. And I got a job with the state of Maine as a public health nurse. And somebody came to visit my parents from Simmons, and they said, well, you got to have a degree. So I don't know who they talked to, but I had a scholarship at Simmons, and I got my degree, bachelor's. And then much later, I got my master's at the University of Massachusetts. And I had a job, which I couldn't believe, as head of the Visiting Nursing Association in was Amherst? Northampton.
You had mentioned your feelings about discrimination. Did you witness or experience any anti-Semitism in the United States or any anti-German feelings in the United States?
No, not really, that I know of. And I didn't talk about it much. See, the job I had didn't allow that, and the people we served, they usually didn't have. If they had discrimination, I didn't know about it because I was there as a nurse or as a leader, both. And the point was to help people who were not well or could live a little better. And it just ended there.
Let's go back to 1945, the end of the war.
Mm-hmm.
What efforts were made by your family to find out what happened to loved ones left behind in Europe? And what did you find out?
My mother didn't want to talk about it, and I was not close to my father. She happened to mention her family. That's how I knew. And my brother and I never lived with our parents again.
When did it dawn on you what had happened to the Jews in Europe? When did you begin to realize the scope?
I was a kid. After Hitler came and we stood with our arms stretched out saying Heil Hitler, I knew. And we also wore yellow stars.
I'm talking about after 1945.
Oh,
when the news started to come out about the camps and everything.
no, I
When did
never
it
talked about
dawn
it.
on you?
I never talked
When,
about it.
but when did you personally, even if your parents didn't talk about it, when did you begin to understand what had happened in Europe? Did it take 5 years? Did it take longer?
No, I don't know really. I think this stuff sort of is mentioned and lives with you. At least that was for me. Because I couldn't do anything about it.
When did you become an American citizen?
5 years after we came. And my brother and I changed our names.
Why?
I changed mine because I wanted to have the same name as my brother. My brother chose Lansing.
Would you spell that, please?
Lansing.
You had mentioned something a few times about the Quaker belief. When you look back, can you share with us what was it about the Quaker belief that gave you comfort and helped you?
The Quakers are silent. In Quaker school, of course, we had silent meetings. We also had total honesty. For instance, there was never a teacher in exams. There didn't have to be, because God help anybody who copied something from somebody else, because the student council would take care of it. We also came to conclusions by talking about it and coming to some sort of resolve, which was, I suppose, totally democratic, and I loved that. And I loved the respect and the way we look at people, that they are important, and each person is something. Is very important.
Have you spoken publicly about your childhood experiences?
I didn't even talk to my children about it, because I just didn't think it was necessary. They could read it all in a book. And I never talked to the kids here in Scarborough. I've never talked about it.
Looking back on your life, how do you think your experiences in Germany impacted the rest of your life?
I really didn't know. As I'm growing older, I can't get much older, I'm more aware of that. Before that, it just wasn't important. It was done with. And I thought, if I can help people, then that would be enough.
Can you please tell us about your book?
Oh, my oldest grandson wanted me to write it, and I thought, well, probably is a good idea. However, it took me over 10 years. And all it is writing about my life. Pretty simple.
Is there anything you shared in your book that you didn't share with us today
No,
that maybe we can get you to share?
I just don't like particularly to talk about the past.
I'm sorry you were gone there for a minute. I completely lost you. But we're back now. I had asked you about your book, if there's anything more that maybe you could share from your book that you didn't tell us today.
Oh, it's just about my life. It's pretty simple.
What's your reaction when you see refugees now coming out of Ukraine and other places?
My heart goes out to them. Their suffering is different, but it's terrible. I mean, I had it pretty good compared to some of those people coming. Some of them have lost kids. They've lost each other. I don't know. It's pretty terrible. And I think, considering where the world is, we'll have more. Because people have to leave the earth the way it is in some parts.
Would you elaborate more on what you mean?
Yeah, I mean, we got to take care of our earth.
Is there anything else that you would like to add before I ask you my last one or two questions?
Ask your questions.
Can you please give me the name of the woman who helped you get to England?
Her name was Dr. Wilson, and you know I never knew her first name.
Her last name was Rosen?
Wilson. Wilson.
Wilson.
Dr. Wilson.
And my last question for today, what message do you have for future viewers, for people who will watch this interview 50 or 100 years from now?
I've asked myself, how can we instill in this world that each generation doesn't commit some sort of crime against each other, like refugee. And I think they have to take care of this earth in order to make all of us a little whole, better. And the earth will be better and will be better taken care of. When I think about my great-granddaughter, I think the gift we give her isn't very good, because that generation will have so much to repair. And their parents, my great-grandchildren, also will have so much to repair. And I hope they're up for it. I hope they read and think and do.
Any other last comments? Anything else you want to share with us today?
No, thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for speaking with us today. Thank you. Who is this gentleman?
My father, Dr. George Lowenstein.
When was it taken and where?
Don't know. He was younger. I don't know.
Okay, thank you. And who is this lady?
Johanna Lowenstein, my mother.
Do you have any idea when or where it was taken? Do you know when or where it was taken?
No.
Thank you. You have two pictures here. Are they different people, the same person? What are we looking at?
It's my brother, Peter Lowenstein, or Peter Lansing. And I have no idea how old he was or where it was taken.
He's clearly younger in one picture and older in the next. Okay, thank you very much, and this now concludes the interview.
Smashing.